think it's the one you invented, Coronation Chicken.
No. I think it might be something like Hatman Piccalilli or something like that.
So the first 3 sandwiches to ever be packed and sold were
Roast beef. No.
Egg and cress.
egg and cress is one.
Yes. Tuna.
Cheese and ham.
No.
Cheese and pickle even.
Go down the fish theme again.
Tuna.
Prawn.
No. Although prawn's the best-selling one in M&S, but wasn't prawn. So they're both seafood sandwiches. So one was the canned salmon with tomato, and the other one was,
sounds
believe it
horrible.
or not, pilchard.
That sounds horrible too.
Yeah. So
Pilchard. On What's the Story Hash Brown Glory today, we have one of Lee's food development mentors. He's a guy who's worked in a lot of places, and if he hasn't been the head of a new product development department somewhere, it's because he's ahead of their new product development department.
Nice.
He's worked with brands such as Pret a Manger, Green Corps, Fat Duck, Utka, and KFC. This bloke's bread and butter is bread and butter. Now, I won't spread this joke too thinly and slice it up, but use my loaf now and introduce Tom Allen! That was a good one, right?
That was good.
No, it was really good.
I'm getting better.
I've got to live up to that now, haven't I?
Tongue twister as well.
The more you write, the better you get. And I was really struggling last night. I was watching Antiques Roadshow and thinking, right, okay.
Really?
Yeah. No.
I've got to say.
But it's the sound of Sunday night, isn't it? Antiques Roadshow.
On theme, I was writing lists of sandwiches, so there we go.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
As we do on a Sunday night.
So mine was loads of sandwiches.
Yeah. Was it?
What, all the ideas of any sandwich ever?
Oh no, it's for an Australian company, just Qantas Airlines. So yeah, just a load of sandwich ideas for them.
Nice.
Yeah, little sideline.
I've been starting this series with why have we beckoned you here, and I think that's quite a good thing. So, what is it that we think you will interest our listeners on as to why we've asked you to come on?
So I think, like, obviously with you guys, what you're doing here, of the food that you're creating is, I think, the type of place that I would have gone to in the past for inspiration, but then the things I'd try to create into commercial products for retailers or coffee chains. But also I think along that journey, I've had my own sort of foray into having my own establishment, because whenever you design things on a much bigger scale, it's diluted by committee. So it's quite nice to own it.
You've
and
alluded
take
to
it
that a
through.
lot, haven't you?
Yeah.
So I think, like, whether it was the right thing or not, I got nicknamed. There's probably people that deserve the name better now, but in the years gone by, I was known as Mr. Sandwich, to the point where when I went around Northampton, people were like, "Oh, I was the sandwich man." Even one day I was driving up the M1, my phone rang, unrecognised number, and this guy was like, "Is this Tom, the sandwich man?" And I was
Nice.
like, "Yeah, I guess so." And he
take
said,
it.
"I'm calling from Korea. Can you come and do some work for us?" So I was like thinking it's a wind up. So I said, "Can I ring you back in a few minutes?" I'm driving, pulled into the services, checked the area code, and it was Korea. And I was like, "All right, okay." So ended up picking up work in Korea to do sandwich development over there. And so sandwiches in Australia, the States, Korea, the UK. So I've travelled the world with sandwiches. but-
Worldwide sandwich guy.
yeah, but there's, like, I think the thing that's quite cool, and I think, like, you have it on your menu here, is that there isn't a place in the world that doesn't have its version of a sandwich. So as humble as the sandwich can be in a true packet format, from your standard egg and cress to some of the things you can create, a bit like this monstrosity here that we're going to bite into. I think, every region of the world has its own spin on a sandwich. So
Yeah.
Well, they do. Sort of culturally, like from a banh mi to a toasty to a sub, like there's just everything's in bread.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I remember launching the first banh mi into each chain. They're not around anymore, but it was
Probably nothing
proper.
to do with the sandwich, though.
No, nothing to do with the sandwich. Well, we launched a Cuban and a banh mi at the same time, which was like groundbreaking. And the banh mi actually had a proper. Well, we didn't get quite as far as the pig head terrine that I wanted in there, but it had a chicken liver parfait in the base, and it had like the char grilled chicken, pickled veg, sriracha. It was really, really banging sandwich. But as a brand, Eat got swallowed up by Pret, and
Like a lot of people as well.
Yeah.
That sandwich, though, the
Practice
banh mi is
takeover.
just like it really is an explosion of flavour, and it's not too indulgent. It's just delicious.
Yeah, well,
like you don't like you eat a Reuben or a cheese toasty, and that's soul food. Whereas a banh mi is just like, oh, this is just utterly delicious, and I want to have more.
Well, when you for the first few months you were open, I started doing a contract locally, and pulled up and grabbed the banh mi and sat in my car and sort of had a little moment to myself. It was just like this, like
Wow,
you say,
that's
like,
praise.
flavour of like, just like
Yeah.
the amount of flavour and texture. And I think that's a big thing that's missing in sandwiches now is, and not at this level, but at pre-made and things going through a Mary chef, you lose texture.
Yeah.
They're all just steamed.
I think that's the
wet.
one thing that we try and do. We try and
Make it
implement the rules of a dish into a sandwich. So you
Yeah.
still need your acidity to cut through the fats, and you need textures within there as well. And it's no point just putting like a bland kind of mix, and it needs to be layers within a sandwich. Like a coronation chicken, we've got the mango chutney, the coronation mayonnaise, then we've got crispy bits from the papadum and the seb noodles, and then we just want elements.
lettuce creaminess. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's all there in that one.
Well, whilst I was living in Australia, presenting products to Qantas many years ago, I made a carnation chicken and presented it to the food team. And a few days later, had a call at work, and it was the Qantas marketing team that do the magazine. And they said, "Oh, we'd like to get some time with you to interview you." And I was like, "Oh, what's that about?" And they said, "Well, creating the coronation chicken sandwich." And I was like, I didn't create it. I was like, how old do you think I am?
I
have no idea what it's for.
And if I had created it, I don't think I'd be working now. So I managed to dodge that one. But we should probably dive into this because hopefully it's still got some texture. But
So tell us about it. I'll hold it up to the camera.
This is there's a little story behind this. So just to give you an idea of the lengths that brands or retailers would go to for a sandwich. I was working, a big part of my career has been with Marks and Spencer's over the years, and I was at the sandwich manufacturer and basically sat down having a tasting, and as we were having a tasting, got a message come through and it was the days when it was a BlackBerry, and it was like, we've had the best, it was the exec team in the States, they'd had the best cheese sandwich or cheese toastie they'd ever had. And they said, they sent a photo of this toastie, and it was this really dark photo on a BlackBerry. And they said, you need to recreate it. And my boss was sat there, and I said, have they said what cheese is in it? And she was like, no. I said, have they said where it is? And they said, no. So she messaged back saying, where is it? And it was in a restaurant called the Breslin Hotel, Breslin Restaurant, which is in the ABC Hotel. And I was like, I'll ask them what's in it. And the food developer was like, oh, they'd moved on to a different place by then. And I said, well, I can't recreate something without seeing it. So I think that was on like a Tuesday afternoon. And I think by Thursday morning, I was told to go to New York to eat this sandwich. So
I was told.
so I literally flew out on the Friday morning, the same week, landed at like 2:00 in the afternoon, went straight to the hotel, not my hotel, I couldn't afford to stay in that hotel, but the hotel that had the sandwich, and this really cool sort of dark restaurant, and ordered the cheese toastie, and the waiter brought it out, and it was epic because you can imagine you've been on a flight for the 6-7 hours, and this like a more enormous toastie on thick sourdough turned up, and I said to the waiter, oh, can you tell us what cheese is in it? And he was like, oh no, sorry, I can't tell you that. I was dead. New Yorkers are either super friendly or a bit aloof, and it was sort of the more aloof sort of guy. And I was with my boss, and I said, should we go to our hotel, check in, and we'll come back later this evening and reorder it because we'll be a bit fresher. I went back that evening, and a 3-cheese board was on the menu further down. I was like, oh no one's going to order. No chef's going to put a 3-cheese toastie on and 3-cheese board with different cheese. So it came out, and it was at that time in a moment in time where everyone used to write on slate what the cheeses were, which was a great giveaway. So essentially this cheese toastie was 2 pieces of sourdough with grilled cheese on top. And the cheeses we hadn't heard of because they're within the US, I think, with the laws around pasteurized and unpasteurized cheeses, there's sort of like some quite cool cheese producers, especially around Wisconsin and Vermont, and you can't transport cheese interstate as well, and unpasteurized cheese has to be older than 60 days to be able to be consumed. So it was sort of these hybrid of European cheeses, but they'd made 2 pieces of cheese on toast, flipped one upside down so you had a layer of cheese on toast on the base, filled it with a rosary goat's cheese, put the other cheese on toast and pan-fried it in butter. And it came with an onion marmalade, red onion marmalade, which was sort of fruity rather than just like your classic onion marmalade. And this sort of strange dip, which I couldn't quite work out what it is. And the best way to describe it was a bit like a Dijon salad cream mayo. And it was sort of super crunchy because you've got like these layers of cheese on toast. And then at the weekend, I was just sort of hanging around for a few days, went to Madison Park, opposite Italy. If anyone's ever there, go and see that. That Italy is probably the best Italy, I think. But in the park, there's a little food market, and there was this guy selling cheese, and he had all these newspaper clippings of the places he supplied to. And I was like, do you supply the Breslin Hotel? He was like, yeah, we do the goat's cheese. And I said, oh, don't suppose you know who does the other cheeses for the toasted, do you? And he said, oh, yeah, I do actually. And I was like, brilliant.
Inspector Allen.
He had a relationship with Neal's Yard in London, and he said, oh, we import from Neal's Yard, but we don't actually send anything the other way. But I'm sure it could be arranged for you. So I came back and I was like, banging, got the cheese ordered, all this sort of thing. And then the marketing team said, no, you need to come in and present the cheese toasty. I was like, the cheeses aren't here yet. I said, no, but this is the date, we've got it in, you've got to present the cheese toasty. So I went down to Neal's Yard and bought, I don't know how much money's worth of cheese. It was a lot of cheese. Trying to get the flavour combination similar to what we had in the States, because the crust was, whilst it had a mature cheddar in it, was sort of nutty and fruity, a bit like a Comte Agria. But it had a really low melting point, whereas our harder cheeses don't. They sort of separate a bit.
Yeah.
And I ended up making this sandwich, going and presenting it, and they were like, yeah, it tastes exactly like it. Amazing. And the marketing person was like, 3 cheese sandwich. And I was like, no, actually, it's like 6 cheeses. And they said, 6 cheeses is too much. Can't be 6 cheeses. And I was like, if you wait a week, I'll have these cheeses. And I describe this, I've told this story a few times, because I describe it as probably the most expensive sandwich in the world, not from the ingredients, but from the trip. But then to get it to a manufacturable state that was like easy to handle in a sandwich factory where you're producing thousands of them in line, we needed a sourdough that was open enough for the cheese to ooze through the pockets, but close enough to spread cheese on while they're moving down a conveyor belt. So Geary's Bakery, which is obviously next village along from here, Jason and the development baker Steve Gurney at the time, they spent, we probably worked for 6 months trying to get this sourdough to the openness but closed texture in a format that wasn't tapering off, so we weren't losing slices because we want the best yield. And we got the bread right and got the cheese right, and in haste it was launched at the beginning of summer, and it stayed on shelf for about 4 to 6 weeks and then came off because it just didn't get traction. If it launched in October, it would have flown.
Yeah,
but
timing's
everything. And that was probably my biggest lesson in, like, you can have the best product, and I mean, it's a bit cold now, you could have the best product, it could be like bang on trend, but if you don't launch it at the right time, it can fail. So,
and you learnt that only 2 years ago?
Oh no, this was years ago.
Oh right,
this
okay.
This would have been. So this sandwich would have been, I think, 2010.
So sorry, just to patch my story together. And you worked with Geary's, but weren't working for Geary's at the time.
No,
right,
yeah,
okay, got you. Sorry.
Yes, this was 2010. So yeah, as you mentioned, my career I've sort of jumped around a bit, but I guess a bit like, I mean, well, chefs, you want to learn.
Yeah.
It's always like what's new. Like my current job is probably my most uncomfortable step, I would say. It's like a big step up, but I think you go and work for someone that inspires you. And with chefs, wherever you are, you want that sort of vibe, don't you, where you're like bouncing ideas and someone gives you some energy to work off. And the managing director of used to be at Green Corn Northampton, which was like 100% M&S account, has gone to Arnua, which is cheese business, cheese and butter, owned by the Irish Dairy Board. And he was like, would you come work for us? And I was sort of like, we talked a bit on the phone, and he did a bit of selling to me. And I've got to admit, when I got the first phone call, I got off the phone and I was a bit like, what am I going to make out of cheese and butter? And then after about 3 minutes driving along the car, I was like, like all these things. And whilst my head's gone like out here of all these things I could probably do with cheese and butter, because it's a really like dormant category. There's not a lot. Don't get me wrong, there's amazing cheese producers, but from a innovation around what we can do with cheese, where we can take it, where we can stretch the brand or brands. There's loads to go after, but also I've come into a business with, I say there's no process, there's a process, but it sort of isn't designed for development. There's no development team, no development function, and a dormant category. So yeah, it's a bit of a task because I thought I knew a bit about cheese, but all I really knew is what I liked, which isn't.
I think everyone's a victim of that. I know I am.
So I've, you know, for me, it's exciting because there's a part of me that's going to learn about cheese, which is like a huge world. I've got to create my own team from scratch, which is exciting. You've done it here. Like that's something you sort of protect. And I think in my career, I've worked, like I say, a lot of places. I'd say 90% of the people that I've worked with or employed in the past, I stay in touch with. It might not be that we speak every month, but we speak or on social media, whatever. But yeah, you build up a little network, don't you?
Yeah, that's probably a good place to sort of say how we even know you because of Lee and your history together.
Yeah, it probably goes
history
Yeah,
together.
it goes back to when I was at the case, really.
Yeah.
Because I was speaking to David about moving into the development kind of world, and he put me in contact with you.
Yeah.
We had a little chat about development, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
the goods, the
Dave-
pros and cons, and
David
stuff
has
like
a
that.
lot to answer for because and I think did you at one point work with Dan Golob?
Yeah.
Yeah, so-
our paths across weirdly throughout our careers because
yeah,
Dan was my boss at Bespoke.
yeah,
For 2 to 3 years there, and we worked really well together. And then James as well, who I worked with you at Papa John's as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of been entwined all the way through in completely different areas. Yeah.
So I mean, I think David at the case probably has a lot to answer for because my first job was on the pots at the case.
Was it?
Yeah. So I
Another case alumni.
I went to visit or do work experience. You know, when you're like 14, you do that school work experience.
Yeah.
I wanted to be in advertising, and it seemed really glamorous, and I wanted to be in advertising. But David had not long opened the case, so at lunchtimes we'd go to the case. He'd give me creative review and design week to sit and read, and
Because obviously David was big into advertising, wasn't he, before he opened the case?
So I'd spend like that time sat there, but all of a sudden I was immersed into this world that I'd never experienced, where it was like just a real buzz about it. I was being fed great food at lunch because I was like 14 years old and being just given restaurant food. And then not every day, but a few days in that 2-week period, he'd be like, do you know anything about wine? Do you want to try some wine? I was like, yeah, go on. Then. So
A 14-year-old.
So that was, I got immersed there and then ended up doing Christmas pot washing and stuff. When I started the supper company with Dan Golob, who that was a real regrounding, I think, because I thought you work in kitchens and you're picking up bits, and then working with Dan was like, forget everything you've ever learned. We're just going to start from basics. And he had worked at Le Manoir, and he was like, we're going to spend weeks in the kitchen just going through traditional recipes, the basics, make it, and like we did everything just to the highest standard, trying to get that like Michelin sort of level. But you can't really do that as an outside caterer. But we won awards as an outside caterer. But within that time, we started doing fresh hampers.
You sent into Wimbledon, didn't you?
Yeah. And David, I remember just in conversation with David at the case, saying, we're looking at doing this fresh hampers. Not sure what sandwiches to do. And he was like, well, if you want what sandwiches to do, just go and stand in M&S and look at what sells. And I remember standing there, like, counting off all the sandwiches, seeing what was there before lunch and what was there after lunch. And then about 3 years later, doing the same exercise again for an interview for M&S, to go to M&S to make more sandwiches. But yeah, David was that segue into...
I think that little analogy is still there, though. Well, a little story, I should say, is like this kind of work that people won't do to further themselves. Like standing in M&S, watching people counting off what sandwiches people, without knowing the data, getting the data yourself to be like, well, that's popular, let's do that.
Yeah.
People don't do that.
No.
That's, without, I don't want to offend you, but that's special. Like, it is.
Well,
it's a real thing that people won't do.
Well, before opening McGee Street, which is another story, but that we looked at several locations, and for the the Wellingborough Road going into Northampton is a busy sort of road, loads of restaurants, loads of hairdressers, more hairdressers than anything else now, I think. Don't know why we need so many hairdressers.
Everyone's got a head.
Everyone's got a head, yeah. But there was a dominant Blockbuster closed, and it was huge premises, and I was like, that'd be amazing, so much space. And I remember sitting for a couple of weeks, like after dropping off the kids at school, like just outside in my car, counting the footfall, and I had like a tally chart. I counted how many people walked up and down that road every day, and then I came to the conclusion that there was a lot of people, but not necessarily the right customers. And we had this, at the time we had our consultancy, which was some little premises in a terraced house. And actually our inspiration was Book Street Bakery in
I love
Sydney,
that place, yeah.
which is amazing. And you will know from people queue outside.
Yeah.
And we wanted to create a place, not necessarily people queued outside because it's cold, but it happened. We created this
Yeah,
like,
you
little
did, yeah.
bakery.
That's sort of what we also wanted to create and
Yeah.
kind of have as well. But I do kind of still want to queue outside.
We're just too. We just
You just put a barrier, put a barrier up at the door, so you wanted
one in, one out. Right?
But like, I think inspiration comes from all sorts of places, doesn't it? Like, I'm just thinking some of the things from McGee Street. I was in a place in New York called Please Don't Tell, and have you heard of this cocktail bar?
Is that the one with the secret door?
Yeah, so you go into it's probably not there anymore. It would have been a long time ago, but you went into, I can't remember what the skateboard burger hot dog place was called, but it was in the East Village, and it was this sort of divey, skatery hot dog place that you went in.
Is it Bubble and Dogs, or is that the one in London?
No, that's the one in London. This was called, I can't remember what it's called actually, but I'd been given this card, and all it said was, please don't tell, a number, and you'd ring up, and it had ring at 3 p.m. You rang at like 3:05, there was no answer. Rang at 3 p.m, you'd get a table. They then text you the address, and you turned up at this hot dog place, and in the hot dogs place there was a phone booth, and you went in the phone booth and rang it, but you had to ask at the hot dog place, like, I'm looking for this cocktail place, I'd send you to this phone booth and you pick it up, and then there'd be, yeah, okay, and the side would open, and there was this dark cocktail lounge. But I remember getting an old-fashioned, and this old-fashioned came with the largest square ice cube that basically filled the glass, and I was like, that would be awesome as a marshmallow on a hot chocolate. And then we started doing these giant marshmallows, and it's like everything. I think as chefs, we take like
Inspiration comes from everywhere.
Yeah. And even down to when we're manufacturing like big stuff that takes an immense amount of resource and team and planning to deliver. There's these little nuggets of ideas that spark that newness, which is, yeah.
And that's what's so fantastic about collaboration and talking. We have like, we've talked about it on previous pods where we have chef meetings and we just discuss things. And before you know it, you're bouncing ideas. We say, well, that one worked, but what about that? Or, you know, let's try this, let's try that, or let's try them all.
Yeah.
Sod it, let's give them all a go.
Yeah.
And it just, it snowballs. It's, you know, no chef is an island, I guess.
No. And I think that's the thing that I've had some roles where I sort of found that quite hard. It's like where you do feel a bit isolated. So that's why you, not in a selfish way, but because you get along, you end up having that banter with people. You pick up the phone on the drive home and you talk ideas through. And I still do it now with friends.
I think that's what you and Dan taught me, is you have to get out there. Like you're not gonna develop anything if you just see the same four walls all the time. You have to get out, you have to look at everything, you have to go to these nice places, you have to go to the places that are really in fashion at the minute, and pretty much take everything, like
look at the trends,
just look at everything. Yeah.
And we're so lucky now. I mean, like I said, I've got to go to New York. I've been very lucky. I've been able to travel. I wanted to travel when I was a student, didn't do it, but I was fortunate enough to get a job that allowed me to do that. But we've got so much on our doorstep in London now. There isn't a cuisine you can't really get, and to the highest quality, because there's so much competition. So we're so fortunate. But like you say, you can become really blinkered. And I remember when we opened McGee Street, that was one of my probably one of my biggest worries, was that I was consulting at the same time, and probably doing too much because I was consulting. Say that Tom's got like loads going on, but I was like,
you're talking about me?
Yeah. But
I'm supported well.
But it was like I was really concerned. I didn't want to get that blinkered view. I wanted to see what was out there. And whilst I'd taken inspiration from amazing places, it was like, you need to stay fresh. You need to stay on top of it. And I know when you've done your posts, like you've taken the team down to London at Christmas and things, like to be able to take the time out in a business like this to do that,
Yeah.
it's the lifeblood of your business, isn't it? You need to keep it going. And I think
You innovate or you evaporate.
yeah, and I think big retail, not so much retailers. The retailers get it; they're always about it. But I think some manufacturers don't work that way. Not all, because I think there's lots of amazing manufacturers out there, but there are some that are getting eaten up because they're not doing that innovation. They don't see the value in it. They see it as this.
See it more of an expense than a cost.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, that little bit of cost can create something massive for you in the end.
It frustrates me the amount of business I've gone into where people say, "Oh, you go do the fluffy stuff," and you're like, actually, without the newness, we wouldn't still be here. It's like,
Well, just taking on that attitude that you were talking about there, like it's alarm bells for us when people don't want to go.
Yeah.
And you go, you don't want to have a day out seeing cool stuff. It's a real big like clarity of like,
I think
okay.
I think for us, right, when we were chefs as well, we just wanted to look at the food, but now we're looking at the operation, everything. We're going to E5 Bakehouse. There was a bakery in Hackney where we basically looked at how they did their toasters, how they got them out so fast.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were pre-made and just finished topping in drawer fridges. You had them all piled up, labelled up, and then did them so fast. So there was no making on the kind of job. And we're like, just looking at everything, every aspect of their service. How did they do it so fast?
And
How
some
did they
people
get the
nailed it.
quality?
They nailed it, but there was another one that didn't. The other one, what was that called? Probably shouldn't say the bad ones. It was a delicious sandwich, but they were slow, weren't they? We waited 15 minutes and we're like,
yeah, where's my food?
well, I mean, they wait 15 minutes here, but it's
different because you're sitting down and relaxing.
That felt like
takeout.
it felt like it was a takeaway place as well. But
you do
we're
look at
nailing
everything. I remember going to places and in London, and it was like the height of the benches. And I remember one day putting my hand under a bench and there was foam, and I was like, it was like a warehouse space, and I was like, that's really clever because it absorbs noise. So
that is good.
So
idea.
at McGee Street, we put like bits of foam under like tables and stuff, just to because it was quite an echoey, empty space, and just like what music was playing, and I was like,
Oh, that's so important.
Yeah.
So important to me, especially. Like if it's crap music playing, I'm angry.
yeah,
But it needs to suit the vibe as well, because we went to this one place. It was supposed to be a fine dining place, and they had like kind of
Stereophonics playing.
pub tunes playing,
Yeah.
and it was just a very mixed environment, and like it all has to go together, all of it. Like as soon as you walk in, you're walking into that kind of really theatre, really, and you're putting on a show for these people that are coming to your place, and if you don't get it right, it just can feel a bit awkward sometimes.
So I think food is so multisensory. When we go on food safaris, I hate the word trawls. People use the word trawls. So putting that out there for all the other people that go on food trawls, it doesn't sound so exciting. Because food safaris sound not so exciting. But you go out and if you look at a recipe online, you can get an element of inspiration. Don't get me wrong, there's stuff out there and there's some real charismatic chefs doing great stuff. But when you're actually there and you get the texture, the aroma, the temperature, like there's so many parts that make a dish great. And I think one of the things that has allowed me to replicate things that I've seen or elevate them to make them my own is when I'm not thinking of ideas. It's like I always just do everything on Post-its, which was something that I started doing with the food people, Trends Watching Agency. We did a few tours with them, and it was like all of a sudden I was breaking down like, okay, the first flavour was this, then I got this texture, the middle flavour was that, and I would almost create, say I was eating this sandwich, a storyboard on Post-its of what the texture, flavor, what the experience was in my head. So when I went to remake it, I was like, okay, well,
So you just flicked through.
I was like, okay,
Was the last chapter in this one time? I got that right at the very end.
Did you?
I was
Yeah,
like, there's a nice bit of time
it was,
in my mouth.
because
Yummy.
the rosary goat's cheese is quite lemony, and they just put like tiny little flecks of thyme in there, but it just came through.
Delicious.
So, and that's I should give credit. So the current owners, so the third owners, but the longest standing owners of McGee Street in Northampton. I know we're not in Northamptonshire, but
No,
promoting
please
local.
do. We have Northampton listeners.
listeners,
Heather,
yeah.
that's you. She'll love that.
And it'll be Jules and Carl now. So Jules was our very first customer that ever came in the door at McGee Street, and now is the owner of husband Carl, and like they're doing a great job. They're smashing it every week. And
You're saying earlier that it celebrated its 10th year
Yeah,
that
10
must be
years,
a proud moment for you to create something and it's still going on.
It was weird actually, because obviously we sold it to move to Australia, and I'd been consulting to Australia for about 6 years to big companies like George Weston Foods and in their bakery world, which is where I got the expo. I was really lucky. I got to go and hound Bourke Street Bakery, or Burke, however you say it.
I'm going with Bourke.
Go Bourke. If you're Australian, it's Burke, but we'll go
Burke.
with Bourke.
Aren't you Burke? You're an idiot. You're Burke.
But,
Idiot bakery.
Hounded
Burke
them at the
Bakery.
Marrickville store, and they eventually let me in after me signing up to a Saturday baking lesson with a load of mums who didn't know anything about baking, and I answered more questions than the guy doing the course. So got to spend some time with them, and like the sort of inspiration of that going into, I mean, I've lost my train of thought now, but it was, I forgot where I was going with this.
Maggie Bakery.
Oh, Maggie Bakery. So, yeah, like, I think, sorry, I've completely lost
10
it.
years.
10 years. 10 years. So, yeah, sorry, 10 years.
I have another question
Yeah,
if you
no,
want
it's
to
all
move
right.
on.
No, it's fine. I've got it. So we came back, and we sold the business to go to Australia. Our kids basically were toddlers, and they were spending their weekends in what was an office, but basically a store cupboard at McGee Street. It's a tiny space, not a lot of space there. And I think this company had offered me a job there 3 or 4 times, and I turned it down. And one weekend, and you'll appreciate this when you're first starting out, you don't get a lot of time with your partner to sit down. And there's one Saturday night we sat down with a glass of wine, and I said to Maddie, I said, oh, this company keeps offering me a job in Australia. And she was like, we'd been back and forth for 6 years as consulting. They'd had some holidays, and I was like, we should do it. We should go. And I was like, but we've got McGee Street, we've got the consultancy, and we're doing really well. We're like mega busy. And she was like, yeah, but the kids like spend the weekends like in the store cupboard. So we moved over, and you know, we stayed in touch with Elliot and Alfie, who took it on and came out and helped a bit at Christmas at one time. But when we moved back to England and we thought we could live anywhere in England. We were like, we'll go and live in Cornwall, we'll go and live here. I spoke to the kids, and they were like, can we go back to Northampton because our friends are there? So we moved back to Northampton. They were friends with those friends for probably another 6 months, and they've all got different friends. But anyway, as kids do. But we're in Northampton, which is great. It's in the middle of everywhere, and easy to get to everywhere.
Isn't it really great there in the East Midlands for like food manufacture though?
Oh
like,
yeah, it's huge.
actually,
And for me as a base, it's been fantastic. And family's local. Our family's actually Loughborough here, so really local. But we came back and it was on Google Maps, and we were like, wow, McGee Street's on Google Maps. It felt like we made it. And then with life, you get busy, and our kids keep us busy. We don't get to go to McGee Street as much as we'd like. And we've been to food events in Northampton, like street food events, and people have gone, oh, it's Mr. and Mrs. McGee Street. And we're like, we don't really feel like we own that title anymore because it's been so long. But we went to this 10th anniversary, and Andrea, who was our first employee, still there as barista, was crazy. Her son, Raf, who's, it must be 16, 17 now, he works there at the weekends as well. And it was really emotional, like all these people like sort of talking to us about it starting, and you get so removed from it and to submerge yourself back in. Yeah, it was sort of it was a really nice evening, and quite an emotional evening, and quite a boozy evening too.
Happy days.
So, sorry, lost my train of thought there a bit.
No, that's absolutely fine. Please, would you fill me up?
Of course, yeah.
What's your point? So let's just talk about sandwiches, because we love a sandwich here as well. Let's keep on that train. The best one you've ever had?
Oh,
I know it's a tough one.
Is it the World Championship winning sandwich that you did?
So that was Joanna Seville, who wrote the Sydney Morning Herald, who was one of the judges. She was the food writer. She did describe that sandwich as better than sex. So that's not a bad.
And what was it?
It was a sort of a twist on a beef Wellington. So I set myself up with a bit of a challenge. It was a bloomer bread, quite buttered and grilled. So it was like really like goldeny, gooey, lovely, a bit like trying to treat it a bit like pastry. To give some context to this competition, I had previously won the British Sandwich Awards 2 years in a row, which was very nice. But the British Sandwich Designer of the Year award was sort of quite. It wasn't restricted, but it was designed to be like a pre-made package sandwich. So it was like, how do you elevate that pre-made package sandwich to the best it can be? And then I was asked to do a Cook It Live competition at a trade show, and two Australian chefs came over. Adam Nasilva, who owned some Hutted restaurants in Melbourne, and Matt Wilkinson, and who owned Pope Joan, and they did these really like restaurant-y sandwiches that were all open. I was like, then I got invited to go and represent England in the World Sandwich Ship competition, which who believed there was such a thing? It's bonkers, really. And I was like, yeah, we'll go. It was like, Maddie came over with me, and we had a week in Sydney, and we went to Taronga Zoo and did a masterclass with sandwiches for kids. Loads of radio and TV interviews and stuff. And then the actual final to go and do the World Sandwich Championship was at Sydney Opera House. So we were cooking outside in the Opera House, and it had been like cold-ish, or like it being below 20. Say cold doesn't feel like a thing to be. All week.
It's cold in ours.
But on the day of the competition, it was like mid-30s, and this sort of rang alarm bells for me because I had ice cream on my sandwich. So, so my sandwich was a twist on a beef Wellington with this buttered bloomer base, I said, and then I'd made a caramelised onion and beetroot, quite fine chutney, and then done a porcini rub on a rib of beef with some watercress. And then I said, like, in the UK, we love an ice cream van in the summer. So I'd done horseradish ice cream on top. Stood there churning horseradish ice cream, leaning over it, trying to create some shade over the ice cream machine. But one thing I didn't consider before I got over there was how hard it was going to be to get horseradish. But just to show the camaraderie in the chefs and the competition, Matt Wilkinson, who still friends with today, he was based in Melbourne. He flew back to his whole concept of Pope Joan. He's from Barnsley, he's an English lad. His whole concept was around veg and produce. So in his restaurant, he had gardens, and he was like, I couldn't get horseradish anyway. He was like, I've got some in my garden. He flew back to Melbourne, came back the next day, wrapped up in a tea towel, and bought me horseradish to make my ice cream.
What a guy.
Yeah, so great guy. And when at Pope Joan, he had a bar next door called the Bishop of Ostia, and he put a sandwich on called the Tom Allen, which was, at the time, I'd done a banh mi here for, it wasn't actually for eat that one, it was for one of the London banks and catering, because if you go to any of those banks, they have quite amazing food because they're trying to keep everyone in the building. And I was telling him about this sandwich, and he made a little banh mi with a crispy pig's ear, cabbage, pickled veg, coriander as a bar snack. So when I opened McGee Street, I was like, can I have a Mr. Wilkinson sandwich? So we had Mr. Wilkinson Ploughman's, which was Montgomery cheddar, crispy streaky bacon, and a cauliflower remoulade, which is a banging sandwich. So
Cauli remoulade.
Yeah. So, but yeah, these contacts, like, you know, you draw, like we said earlier, it's inspiration, isn't it?
I think we need to work on this guy with Tom's help and call it the Tom Allen.
Yeah.
I think that would sit quite well.
Well, I did think maybe when I've got a bit more time, we should try and recreate the world sandwich and bring that back to life. Because so within that world competition, you had to create a few sandwiches, and one of them was there was different categories, and one of them was around chicken, and I made a chicken Caesar. M&S actually launched that Caesar dressing in the wrap when I came back, so it was an easy lift and launch. But to put ice cream on a sandwich was a real challenge. They wanted it in the cafe and couldn't do it. But we launched the Caesar, so the world best national sandwich, as it's called, on that little trophy, British trophy, big, world trophy, little.
Is this the one that Sam won as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've had 3 of the best sandwiches in the UK. I sat in that very chair. I'm only going to sit in that chair for a bit.
We should have a sandwich off.
Not have a rubber doll.
Yeah, we should have a sandwich off.
Oh, we will. We'll do that again.
Yeah. But yeah, maybe we could.
That's a good episode event, actually. Let's log that one down.
You know what we could do? We could do it in the garden, and we could have little stalls. Yeah. Open it up and just have 3
sandwich off.
Have a sandwich off. Yeah. So have.
What about Sam?
Sam, Tom, and us 2.
Okay.
And then 3 stalls, and then we'll have people come in, and we'll only serve them 3 toasters.
Yeah, he'll be well up for that.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Right, let's pause that thought. And we're back with a hash brown that's been covered in what, Lee?
Loveliness.
It's snowed parmesan on it, hasn't it?
This is our loaded hash brown. and he's been on for this week, and he's probably going to have another week left on it, and then we're going to change it over again. So we've got underneath this mountain of parmesan.
It's like snow.
It's unbelievable.
Spinning. It's unbelievable.
We've got a truffled mayonnaise, chives, and parmesan.
It looks awesome. I've been looking forward to the hash browns. I've obviously seen them online and social media, but
Have you never had one?
never had one. Because I
Holy
also, as a
shit.
customer, whenever I've got, because I don't live that close, whenever I've got here, it's sort of been around lunchtime.
Yeah,
so
so-
your cheeky pig cob,
Yeah.
I've wanted to try that since the beginning.
Have you not
and
had
I've
that
never
either?
had it. The amount of times I've come in and it's been like, oh, you've just missed breakfast. It's like,
You'll love that. You'll love that.
So, but yeah, I just got to come earlier.
Be our guest. Dig in.
Thank you. I mean, as a hash brown go, that looks pretty epic.
The cheeky pig, we'll talk about that whilst you're eating, actually. That's 3 cuts of pork. So it's pork belly, ham hock, and pork cheek.
Hence the name.
Yeah, the cheeky pig. And it's then rolled into a nugget, and we panko it with,
Airbag.
thank you, like pork crackling,
Yeah.
basically, for they that don't know what airbag is. And it's served in a brioche cob with brown sauce and a fried egg. And it's pretty epic. My daughter loves it.
It is. It is that kind of a. We want that to be like our. At the start, we wanted that to be our signature kind of cob, didn't it? I think the muffins overtook
Yeah,
that
it
as
has,
being
yeah.
a signature
Which is
kind of
also
breakfast, which is great.
Yeah.
But as well, this is like when we designed the hash brown, it was just an accompaniment to go with the full English, wasn't it? It wasn't. We didn't think of it. It was going to turn into this kind of wee little monster where we could actually just open a shop full of hash browns.
Yeah.
To be fair.
Yeah. It's like in wedding catering, I've got the steak wrap chip. Like, people fucking go mental for a steak wrap chip. You could have just that at weddings, and it's the same with this.
That's amazing. Like, it's better than I imagined it would be. It's like because you've got that
Better than sex.
that crunchy texture, but then it's really light. I mean, it's rich, but really light inside. And yeah, I expected it to be far heavier, but no, it's and the Parmesan snow, as we're calling it, on top. That's really cool. It's just so much texture to it. Just like every bite is crunching.
Yeah.
It goes on and on and
Yeah.
on.
That's what I wanted in the hash brown, which is as well something that we've developed recently, because we used to grate the potato by hand, and we was very unsure of getting a machine to grate the potato, because we wanted exactly the same thing as we've always had. So we've invested recently, haven't we?
Yeah,
in a RoboCoupe that actually grates the potato. We spec the size of the grate, so it was exactly the same as we've
consistent.
always done. And it's knocked off hours. Of,
Yeah.
hours
I can imagine.
Of, and
Well,
people's
you do 12.5 kilo of potato in like less than 2 minutes.
yeah.
Vring, vring, vring.
It's gone from the worst. It's gone from the worst.
Lee's just in the whole kitchen. New toy.
Well, yeah. The chefs have lost muscles in their right arms.
Yeah, and the fingers that they've grated have started to grow back as well. So it's gone from a 2.5 hour, 3 hour job to
Just
just over an hour. Yeah, just the cooking. So
The mixing and cooking, the peeling takes a while still. We haven't got a rumbler yet. But
We're not gonna
we've
get
got
a rumbler.
space either. But
not gonna get a rumble.
bosh.
But yeah, so it's
you-
always developing, and we've gone from doing a little half tray right at the start. Now we do the quadruple batch of the which is 166 hash browns at once,
Okay.
and we do that twice a week. So we go over.
So you opened, sort of being famous for the custard tart. What would you say you're famous for now?
I think hash brown is the most famous thing. I still think the custard tart is, and a lot of customers, it's the best custard tart around.
Oh yeah, I bought the custard tart when I go and visit my parents.
I think it's very hard, for me personally, my opinion is it's very hard to pinpoint. I mean, hash brown obviously is the muffin. I think the steak and eggs as well. They're all like people are looming here for them. In the sweet, I think the Biscoff as well.
Yeah.
Biscoff, the LMP, the
LMPs
and the
not good
custard
one?
tart as well. Lemon meringue pie.
Oh, lemon pie. Yeah, that's really clean cut, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got that
Proud.
big
It looks
tower.
really good. Yeah.
I think
And
those,
the millionaire
those
as well.
Yeah, the millionaire.
I think it's good that we've got
great
here-
products.
we have we've got kind of hero products, haven't we? Kind of.
But then I think part of that comes like, there's, when you look at chefs and development chefs, like when you learn to be a chef or you're taught or you go to a kitchen, you only know that sort of world. There aren't many restaurants that allow you the time to develop, but you've both done both. So you've got the experience in like,
I wasn't very good at it, to be clear. I was pretty terrible at being a development chef.
The thing that development development's taught me is the consistency.
Yeah.
It just has to be the same every time.
And
There's just no excuse.
That process of refining to get it exactly as you want it.
That's what always frustrated me in restaurants, was that when I worked in them, was there not being the same thing twice.
Yeah.
Well, there was, but it wasn't like, Lee cooked it or Dave cooked it or Sebastian cooked it, whatever. It was always different because we're all different.
Yeah.
Whereas that's what we've got really good here, and I'm really happy about that. It's like there's a herd of reindeer running past the window.
It's the snow. It's enticing them.
Okay, Adam, can we please have some reindeer prancing across the YouTube edit now? Tom, you got some questions for us, or a quiz, or what have you got prepared?
So,
hit us with it.
As you are aware, a lot of my background is sandwiches, fair amount in pizza, and now a fair bit in cheese. There's a theme, isn't there? It's all bread and cheese, really.
Indulgent stuff.
So I have a few questions. One, to start with, I'll try and take a score as I go because I haven't got pen and paper. It should be hard.
Is this a quiz then? Or
we'll make it
It's a quiz.
Okay,
Quiz.
fine.
Okay, so number one, how much sandwiches worth in the UK?
Tom.
Got him.
Well, you've got the upper hand here. I think it's 6 billion.
I'm sure we had that.
Do you have a take on that build? Or?
How much is it worth?
Yeah, as a category.
So I think it's more than that because per year, I'm going to say
Anytime today.
8.5.
It's waiting for it to go up.
8.5 billion.
Oh, Lee is the closest. It's 8.2 billion.
Because it was 6 billion sandwiches. It was 6 billion sandwiches sold in a year, and each sandwich is about £1.50, something like that.
So the total food to go market, if you include like sushi, soup, or anything bought at lunch, basically is worth 48.2 billion.
48.2.
Yeah.
It's bonkers, isn't it?
I have an update on your fact. You're not far off, but it's the next question. So, out of that 8.2 billion in value, how many sandwiches are sold each year? Do you want me to take your
5 billion? I'm going to say
5 billion and one.
Oh, that is it.
You went first last time, motherfucker.
If we're going for closest,
Lee still wins.
Lee would win again, but I don't think I can give it to him because it's well. So it's 3.8 billion, but basically 3.8 billion sandwiches sold last year. So the sandwich market slightly in decline because people are buying healthier options,
salad
stuff.
Yeah.
But that still equates to 123.5 million sandwiches a second. Per
second.
So yeah, I was trying to work this out. So to give context because the business I'm now working in, we turn over billions. So I was like, well, what's the difference between a billion and a million?
A lot.
So yeah. So if you're looking at it in a time, a million seconds.
Oh, someone did this. Yeah.
A million seconds is 11 days, 13 hours and 46 minutes, 60 seconds. A billion seconds is 31 years, 251 days.
The disparity between millionaire and billionaire is huge.
Yeah, it's nuts.
There aren't very many billionaires in the world,
So-
but there's a lot of millionaires.
If the three of us were to try and start eating that 132 sorry, if the three of us were to try and start eating that 123.5 million sandwiches, it would basically, for the three of us, we start eating now and we ate one a second, if that was possible, it would take 40.5 years for us to eat a year's worth of sandwiches.
And that's even 1 a second.
Let's give it a go.
So anyway, that's all about numbers. We'll move on from the numbers.
I love the numbers though. They're exciting.
So now diving into pizza. So this question is, are you familiar with the Detroit style pizza?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know what the cheese crust is called around the edge of the pizza?
What's it called?
Yeah.
The cheese crust around the edge.
Yeah.
Right.
Stuffed.
So it's called a frico.
Frico.
And if you were ever to go
Frico.
to like a tavern in Detroit, so like or Chicago, where you've got the Chicago deep pan, that's sort of, having worked with some guys now that live in Chicago, that's the tourists. They all go for the tavern style, which is the square tray.
Yeah.
And they go for the Frico, which is predominantly the corner, because it's a bit like our cheesy rolls where you get all that Frico edge, which is the crispy cheese. So the corner's always a bit...
What cheese is it on top? Is it like classically like a cheddar or something?
Yeah, so the US, it's a pasteurized cheese because it's a long story, but basically it goes into the next question actually. Most cheese in the US is pasteurized. They are allowed to produce pasteurized cheese, but it's not allowed to go into state. So the cheese that goes onto the pizza is like a foie de latte.
Okay.
Their version of. So what you find is across the states there'll be cheeses that they can't import because of the pasteurization process and life on a cheese. So those regions will make their own version of. But I think that makes the US quite an exciting cheese space, because they're like the new world of cheese, because they haven't got the history passed down by generations and generations of cheesemakers that we'd have in UK and France. So whilst they would try and recreate a cheddar, or they might try and recreate a brie, for example, it'll be their own version of. So that's why you get slightly sort of more experimental and more interesting. Not necessarily more interesting, but different cheeses. Yeah, different cheeses. So on that note, going straight into cheese and the USA, name 3 cheeses that are banned in the United States.
Oh, banned?
Yeah. Banned from import, sorry. Banned from import.
Oh, banned from import?
Yeah, banned from import.
Okay.
Reblochon.
Got one?
Langres.
No.
Pont de l'Evêque.
Brie de Mer.
Pont l'Evêque would be, but it's not on there. Brie de Mer would be. Yeah, so you got 3. You picked...
Brie de Meaux, guys. Brie de Meaux.
Brie de Mer.
I mean, the most...
That's wrong.
The most...
Brie de Meaux.
Brie de Meaux.
Let's talk this properly.
From Leicester.
Epos, Camembert, Reblochon.
Camembert's
not. Brie. So basically...
It's unpasteurized.
Any unpasteurized cheese... So to legally sell a cheese in the US that's unpasteurized, it has to be more than 60 days old. And all those cheeses are young cheeses, so they can't actually get into the States.
When I worked on the boats in France, I was a private chef on a barge in France, and we had 8 passengers, and we're all 98% of the time they were American charters, and they loved the cheese board. We had 2 cheeses at lunch and 3 cheeses in the evening. The things I learned from that, because the hostess used to present it, and the things I learned from them walking up and down the kitchen going thingy, like just rehearsing their spiel was something. And I have a Brie de Meaux poem. Would you like to hear it, Tom?
Go for it.
A poem?
Yeah.
Go on then.
It's the only bit of poetry that I can give you like that. And Adam's about to fall in love with me. Okay. In fact, I'll address Adam straight to camera 1. Sweetheart mine, I send to you with all the love and care that's due, a Brie de Meaux to make you smile, to let you know that saddened by your absent scent, I am quite deprived of all my appetite, and that is why I send this Brie, and what a sacrifice it is for me. I've known that for over 20 years. Thank you.
That was very good.
Beautiful.
But to roll that off just like that.
Yeah. It's because they practiced it every night for 6 months in front of me, going back and forth while I was doing the dessert. Oh, I know it's better than you. And then the new hostess will come and start practicing. I'm like, I can teach you this one.
Okay, so back onto sandwiches. I don't think you can have a poem about this one, unfortunately.
Try me.
So, when was the Chorley wood process invented?
Oh, I don't even know what the Chorley process wood is.
Okay, so the Chorley wood process was when sort of industrialized baking for fast production, so high-speed baking essentially, which I don't have science behind, but I think in theory, I think is what causes more not allergens, but more intolerance to bread, because
it's got stuff in it.
It's got stuff in it,
additives in.
And also like from mixing to baking is like a 2-hour, and perhaps bagging is like a 2-hour process, so the yeast isn't fully activated. And like I used to do this thing at the bakery where I'd get like Chorley wood processed bread, and we used to do education at the bakery, and we'd get school kids come in, and I'd get them to screw up like cheap bread into a ball, and I'd say like, you can keep that for the rest of your life and it'll just go hard, or we could put it in a glass of water and see what it does over the afternoon while you're baking. And over the afternoon, actually, it swells, but it takes the average human gut about 4 days to digest that soft white bread, because you're not generating any saliva to break it down because it's so soft. You think about like French baguettes and things. You chunk, you're chewing, and that generates saliva, which breaks down the bread. So what I used to say to these school kids and get their parents to come in and buy our milk bread was that if they'd have this bread, by day 4, you've got, like, if you're having 2 slices of that bread a day, you've got 8 of these little balls in your stomach that is expanding, and that causes your bloating. And if you have proper bread, it doesn't do the same thing. So, like I said, there's theories behind it, and there is research, and I'm not a scientist, I'm not making the claim, but that's what I believe is one of the
I believe it probably to be very true.
But the Chorleywood process was invented, so it's fast production, like flying bread out really quick. It's generally blocked in 4 pieces in a tin, so it proves quicker. So if you buy a loaf of bread, if you were to take out, if you were to go and buy a soft white or wholemeal loaf, you'll look. If you take it out and push all the slices together, you'll see like 4 lines going down the side.
Yeah.
Because they block the dough in 4 pieces to prove it quicker to get it through the oven.
Doesn't that stop it tearing as well?
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about the other day. You know, when we were discussing, we've got a bread issue, and it's made by a artisan bakery, Warwick Bakery, but it's just hair. And that stops it tearing. That's what I was thinking. We need to make our own, but twist it.
And also to your point, they'll put softeners and other things in there and sugar to help it keep its life. And so
I'm going to guess 1975.
I was going to say 78.
You're both a bit late. 1961.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's why it is the best thing since the last bread. It's been around for 100 years. 50 years.
Kingsmill.
So, Lee's in the lead, but I have one more question just to give you the opportunity here. So, and I think you'll probably both get this, but which shop was the first to sell pre-packed sandwiches in the UK?
What shop?
I'm going to say Marks and Spencer's.
Yeah, I'm going to say Marks and Spencer's.
Okay, you're both right. Do you want to guess
when?
Not
What
when,
sandwich
no,
it
not
was?
when. Do you wanna, so I can tell you, it was in the 80s. So this will give you an idea about the cuisine. So it was in the 80s. And originally it was the sandwiches made for the cafe that didn't sell. They would repack to obviously boost the sales. So it was like them sold into their, So
I think it's the one you invented, Coronation Chicken.
no.
I think it might be something like Hatman Piccalilli or something like that.
So the first 3 sandwiches to ever be packed and sold were
Roast beef.
no.
Egg and cress.
Egg and cress is one.
Yes. Tuna.
Cheese and ham.
No.
Cheese and pickle even.
Go down the fish theme again.
Tuna.
Prawn.
No. Although prawn's the best selling one in M&S, but it wasn't prawn. So they're both seafood sandwiches. So one was the canned salmon with tomato, and the other one was,
sounds
believe it
horrible.
or not, pilchard.
That sounds horrible too.
Yeah. So
Pilchard.
Pilchard sandwich.
But the number one
tongue.
selling M&S sandwich now is the
Get to lift this
So
monstrosity.
Lee wins. Lee wins.
This monstrosity.
Yeah.
I had to thank my mum and dad for this moment.
Yeah,
My
it's
chosen
a golden
guardian.
hash brown. To be
chosen
honest,
guardian.
it feels like that's the bronze award of those hash browns compared to this hash brown. I think you need to up your hash brown game on the board.
It took me ages to make that. I had to get them from America.
You need to send them photos of your hash brown. So this is a proper hash brown.
I should have.
Imagine that.
Yeah. I don't think they'd listen. I got
Imagine
thousands.
the resources.
And there's some mug that comes over and pays a
Trophy.
ton for each of them anyway. So, they're still selling. Tom, you've been an absolute treat.
Thank
Do
you
you
so
have
much.
anyone to say thanks to? Do you want to thank the Academy, or anyone wants to get in touch with you if they want an amazing career in sandwiches?
I think
cheese and butter now. But
just thanks. Like, there's been lots of inspirational people in my career that have helped me along the journey. So, named a few along the way, but yeah, as chefs like James Molson, who's at Green Corps for M&S, is culinary wise way out there. James Campbell is the head of chilled food for Sainsbury's. He pastry chef. He's got a book on Japanese patisserie, but he's like a real driving force and full of energy all the time. Dan Golob, whilst we worked our asses into the ground a lot of the time, he sort of show. I remember picking up books and not even knowing. I remember him telling me get some Emmental. I was like, I haven't even heard of that word. What is Emmental? Like, he told me to buy Larousse's gastronomic guide and Escoffier's repertoire.
Oh,
yeah. And getting those books at Christmas and sitting reading them, thinking, God, this whole new world.
Yeah, there is.
So yeah, like there's just been some amazing chefs. So I mean, one Lee Williamson, who's a local Leicester chef. He when I was at uni, he was the chef in Loughborough at a restaurant I was at, and just the best teacher. He'd get you, like, I was on the pots, but he'd be like, do you want to learn how to make this? Do you want to learn how to make that? And when service was a bit quieter, he'd get you doing stuff. And
That's
he's
great,
still
isn't it?
a great teacher. So yeah, there's just been some really sort of inspirational people.
Well, how you can teach people is by launching that book you were talking about in the break. So in the break, Tom and I were talking about, books and whatever, would people buy it? But people would. So this is I think, and I come up with a name for you, by the way. I'm just going to name you a book. You call it the nub ends.
The nub ends.
Oh, the doorstops.
The doorstops.
It's all the fancy sandwiches that he's developed over the years. Any sandwich that hasn't made it to the shelf.
For people.
Because some of the best.
Do you know what the thing is? You've already done the work.
Yeah,
the recipes are there. You've got to write, this is the lovely sandwich that I did when I was flying to New York one time.
And the story as well. The story that will go through them all would just be.
And like we said, like some of the ones that launch are the ones that get diluted because of the committee involved in developing them.
I think you have to come back in a year and tell us about the book launch, or do a live book launch on the podcast. The work's already done. I can send you to a graphic designer. It's already there.
Cool. Yeah. No, that's my challenge. That's the gauntlet.
So, guys, if you've enjoyed this podcast, you want to see more, give us some love, subscribe, like, tell your friends, maybe pass the pod on to someone. A foodie lover would enjoy this, no doubt.
Thank you for having me.
See you later.
Thanks, guys.
Where's doing your look?